One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do I balance what I spend now and what I have to save for the future? It's like a choice for many people between living now or living later. And I find it a difficult question to answer because in reality, money is finite. If you save it now, you will have it for the future. And if you don't save it now, you won't. So one of the challenges that we need to undertake is to make sure that we have a very clear view of what our future is. Obviously, if our future is expensive, we want to live in Park Avenue in New York, then we're going to need to save a lot more now for the future. But what I've found when people really think deeply about the future is that it's actually not what they think it is. For every one of my clients that come through my door, I get them to answer these 4 questions. Firstly, if you had all the money in the world, what would a year look like, a month, and a week? Then, if you had the same amount of money as you have now, but were given 6 months to live, what would you do? Third, if you died tomorrow, what would be your regrets? And lastly, when you think about retirement, how do you spend your day, your week, your month, or your year? Both my clients and myself have learned a huge amount from the answers to those questions because it really stops to make us think about something that not many of us do. So my first learning is around the fact that so many of us don't have what I call the real conversations with our partners. The conversations about our dreams, the conversations about our future, the conversation about our regrets. And because we don't have those conversations, we truly aren't building a shared vision of our future. Sometimes we don't have those conversations because we're scared to. My husband and I took quite a while to have those conversations. And I think part of my reasoning was that I was scared that his answer would be that he wanted to retire in England, which it was. And mine was that we wanted to retire here. But what's been amazing is that once we have had those conversations, we have an extreme amount of fun because we have created a joint vision of our future. And that vision of our future has meant that we're starting to bring that vision more and more and more forward because we know what it is that we're saving for. The next learning that I've had is that so many of us have visions of the future that are based on the world out there. Now, the world out there is truly anybody else except ourselves. When I ask people, why do you want that? They often say to me, well, you know, if I think deeply about it, it's actually my ex that wanted to live in a house on the beach in the middle of nowhere. I also find that their answers come from their parents and what they did, or their grandparents and what they did in retirement. And our world is so different from our parents' and our grandparents' world. But we don't stop to actually think, well, do we really want to go and live in the middle of nowhere? So we need to think deeply to claim our own view of what retirement looks like. And for many people, they are surprised to see that it is actually different. But if it's the same, that's absolutely fine because it's your choice. What happens when we think about both the combination of what we really want to do and these conversations that we jointly have with our partners is that we truly start to see that there's much more to retirement than the actual consumption of money. So many people say to me, I'd love to paint more. I'd like to mountain bike more. I'd like to go for more walks on the beach with my family. I'd like to spend more time actually with my family rather than at work. Now, all of those are actually things that you can do right now. So delaying what we think is our life for this future life, that future life is something that you can live now. Take those painting lessons. Invest a little bit of your money to one class every single week. And what happens is that you start to become a happier person in saving, because you're actually doing what it is that you want to do when you're retired. So living life now instead of the future can be something that is not expensive, that you can do. And even if it is that one of your dreams is to go to see Patagonia, then start saving now, and in 5 or 6 years' time, go on that trip. It will be a gentle saving as opposed to trying to come up with all of that money in 1 year. The last thing I've learned when it comes to people's responses to these 4 questions is the answer to the question of, if I was to die tomorrow, what would I regret? For most people, there's an element in the answer of unpreparedness. I would regret that I don't have a will in place. I would regret that my affairs are actually in a shambles. I'd regret that my husband and I haven't had the really hard discussion about who's going to be the guardian of our children. So what I do is that I ask them to imagine the first scenario, which is you have just died and your partner has received the news. Then what happens? And we go through imagining then what happens. How do they find the will? Is there a will? Who has the will? How do they actually put petrol in the car? Because accounts with a dead person are frozen, so often they're joint accounts, and that means that your partner isn't able to access money to put petrol in the car, feed the kids, and let alone provide for your funeral. Then we imagine the second scenario, which is you have both just died, and then what happens? And after imagining those scenarios, it's quite easy to know exactly what needs to be put in place. So to answer the question of how do I live now and save for the future, it comes down to having a strong, clear vision of what you want that future to look like, and being brave enough to carve out the time and space in the current to do those things that you want to do in the future, to deprioritize some of the clutter in our lives, to make sure that those things that bring us joy and bring us meaning are things that we're doing now. Have a great week, and I look forward to hearing how all of you have started to live your lives now instead of waiting for the future.